Our world trains us to be scattered, multitasking, overloaded schedules, and constant stimulations pulling us in 1,000 directions. And then we wonder why we're exhausted, foggy, and disconnected. Focus isn't about gripping tightly to a task. It's about choosing where your attention rests and returning to it gently when it wanders, again and again and again. Focus and attention aren't just skills or processes we have that we use to get us through the day. What we focus on shapes our lives. So, what does your focus say about you? Hello, and welcome back to our revamped 8 Skills of Mindfulness series. This week, we are jumping into skill number 7, focus. And our focus is more than just where we put our attention. It is an expression of self-respect, and it very much influences and shapes our reality. Let's talk about it. Neuroscience shows that every time we notice our mind has wandered and we bring it back, whether we use our breath, a sound, or our physical environment as our anchor, we strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that is responsible for attention, decision-making, and impulse control. Now, if you're thinking, but Coach Lauren, what if I struggle to notice in the first place? Well, you can still start implementing practices of focus into your life now, but that information is also telling you that you aren't done working with skill number 1, awareness. So if you're struggling to even notice you're in distraction, that's okay. These things take time. Make sure to keep some of the awareness practices in your routine and be gentle with yourself. Noticing after the fact is still progress. For now, consider this. You are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. As I mentioned in the beginning, focus isn't just a productivity skill. It's a form of self-respect. It's about honoring yourself enough to choose what gets your attention and what doesn't. It says, my mind, my time, my energy, and my peace. And I choose to give them to what's real, what's true, and what nourishes me. If our focus is constantly hijacked by distractions, comparison, or things you don't even want to care about, how much of you is being lost in the process? In psychology, selective attention is our brain's way of filtering information so we can focus on what matters most to us. Selective attention isn't just about willpower, though. It's a whole team of brain regions working together. The prefrontal cortex decides what matters. The anterior cingulate cortex keeps distractions in check, and the parietal cortex locks and holds the attention once the PFC decides what we are paying attention to. And even the thalamus filters what gets through our consciousness in the first place. So to decide what to focus on, this group of brain regions essentially applies 3 filters: what is meaningful to us, what is emotionally charging, and what is tied to our goals or survival. The tricky part is we don't always consciously choose what feels meaningful or emotional or survival based. So while our brains are wired to help us focus, there is more to it than just mechanics. Even with all those systems in place, how we experience focus moment to moment matters just as much. And that's where a lot of us get tripped up, because we've been taught that focus means trying harder, but really, true focus starts by softening. We think focus means a clenched jaw and a furrowed brow and just trying harder, but real, mindful focus doesn't feel like effort. It feels like a gentle return. If your focus feels strained, that's your cue to soften, not to grip tighter. Sometimes the best way to strengthen attention is to relax. You might have heard it from a friend before. You tell them about this frustrating experience you're having, you're trying to figure something out, and they tell you to take a break, come back to it, walk away. Whether it's a big work project, a difficult conversation you're rehearsing in your head, or trying to make sense of a personal challenge, your brain reached a point where pushing harder isn't productive anymore. Taking a mindful pause, like stepping out for a breath of fresh air, grabbing a nourishing snack, or my favorite, snuggling a pet, it helps to clear the mental clutter and create space for a reset. Then, when you come back to the task, you're not just more focused, you're more present, more aware, and often more kind to yourself in the process. And this isn't just good advice from a friend. The break they are encouraging you to take allows for what scientists call cognitive reset and attentional recovery. And these are vital for sustained focus. So if you do find yourself struggling to lock your focus in, step away for a minute instead of trying to push harder. Now, did you know, as much as our brain is involved in deciding what gets our attention, focus is not just a mental activity. So they say we hold intelligence in 4 different ways. There's, of course, the mental, which is our thoughts and our logic. Then we have emotional, our feelings and our reactions. Physical intelligence, which is the signals our body gives us. And intuitive, our inner knowing, like when your gut tells you something. But most of us are trained to live only in the mental space up in our heads. Maybe you grew up in a home where you were told directly or through tone and silence that crying was a weakness. So you learned to override your feelings, to be strong, or to avoid conflict. Maybe later in life you were in a relationship where your gut just kept telling you that something's off. But every time you brought it up, you were made to feel dramatic or irrational. So eventually, you stopped trusting that inner knowing. And in school and work, we are often rewarded for logic, strategy, and productivity, but rarely are we taught how to recognize emotional cues, listen to our body's signals, or even value intuition as a form of truth and information. So we learn to over-identify with the thoughts and under-trust everything else. We default to thinking our way through everything, even when it's not the tool the moment it calls for. Focus doesn't only live in the mind, you can focus with your body by noticing tension. You can focus with your heart by feeling your way through a moment. And you can focus with your intuition by sensing what's right, even if you can't explain why. So when you are practicing focus, you might check in and ask yourself, am I focusing from my mind, emotion, body, or intuition? You don't have to make sure you are choosing the right one. Just noticing where your attention is rooted can bring more awareness. And that is the beginning of real balanced focus. For instance, I might be halfway through watching the next episode of the series I'm on, and I catch my cat being absolutely ridiculous with a toy. Without even thinking about it, I stop watching the show and I start watching him instead. That is emotional intelligence at work. My attention shifts because something else brings me joy, connection, or love. Or maybe I've been working for hours and suddenly feel that tightness in my neck or my posture is collapsing. That's my body asking for attention, and that's my physical intelligence stepping in. And sometimes I just get that gut feeling. It may not be loud or logical, but it says pause here. This isn't the time to speak or act. That's intuition guiding my focus. Each type of intelligence brings something valuable. Noticing where our attention is coming from gives us more choice in how we respond, and that is where transformation begins. All right, friend, I have 2 practices for you that are great for retraining your skills of focus and attention. This first one is one you can do anytime and almost anywhere. Focus on a still object. This can be anything in your home, office, or workplace, at the store while you're standing in line or waiting, anywhere. First, of course, pick any object from your environment. A little bonus tip that if you designate an object in your home or workspace as your focus object, every time you unintentionally see it or pass by it, it'll give your mind just a little gentle nudge of a reminder to return to your focus. Okay, after you've chosen your object, set a 1-minute timer and just let your attention rest gently on that object for the whole minute. When your mind wanders, because it will, just gently return to the object. No judgment or self-criticism. This practice trains the mind to return and strengthens our capacity to stay present even when distractions come up. If you're a driver, mindful driving is another great practice we can use to sharpen our focus. But even if you're not, the principle of the practice can really be applied to any of those mundane activities or chores that we do throughout our days. So first, You acknowledge the task at hand. Like instead of, I'm just driving, take a deep breath and say to yourself out loud, I am going to mindfully drive to my destination. Get settled in, buckled in, because safety first, and let everything else that has happened already that day melt away. And anything that is to come, let that stay in the future. Then we're going to notice our physical environment. Take hold of the steering wheel. Notice the temperature and the textures. Feel the seat beneath you. Notice the pedal beneath your foot. And even take note of any scents or sounds. Throughout your drive, this is where you're going to keep and return your focus. If you notice that during your journey, intrusive thoughts come in, maybe you start replaying a past conversation, or maybe you're running through scenarios of what you want to do later, gently remind yourself, I am mindfully driving to my destination, and just bring your focus back to your environment. Notice the cars around you, signs and buildings, the steering wheel in your hands. Now, let's say you're just sailing along, having a nice smooth ride, and someone cuts you off, making you brake hard, disrupting your whole flow, and now you didn't even make the green light. We still want to treat our thoughts about that interaction the same as we would any other intrusive, distracting thoughts. If we keep our mind on that inconvenience and create a story about why they were so rude to cut us off, how I was here first, and that story and the judgments we make are what create the emotional upset within us and keep us stuck in it even 10 minutes after the event has passed. Because really, is anything actually wrong? Yeah, they could have been and acted better, done better. But so can we after the fact, just by letting it be. It happened, it's past, and that's all there is to it. As opposed to spiraling out for 5 minutes, cursing all the other drivers, which will ultimately just impair our mood for when we do get to our destination. All right, these simple practices help to train our brains to engage in and stay engaged in mindful practices while going about our normal days. Friend, as you move through the rest of your week, remember, focus isn't about being perfect. It's about learning to come back. And it's not just about staying on task, it's about honoring yourself enough to choose what gets your attention. You deserve to give your best energy to the things that matter most, because what we focus on grows stronger within us. Okay, I also have a guided meditation linked in the description below for you to practice returning to your focus. And next week, we will wrap up with skill number 8, equanimity. Thank you so much for sharing a piece of your day with me, friends. Stay present, stay kind to yourself, and I will see you soon.